15 angles I can come at this. But we are here to talk about healing. And some of that's going to take place here tonight. But there's a lot that's going on. A lot of movement is happening. There's a lot of attacks against people where there's a lot of things propelling forward. Right? Today was the first day of LifeWise, and it went really well. It was beautiful. And but that's like pestering the spirit realm when you do something like that's, like poking at it, like, hey, we're doing this, and there's just things like that, the eagles coming and landing, the things that are coming, the service this Sunday. I just have a strong feeling about that service. Like it's like one of those that the kingdom of darkness is like, I really don't want that to happen. So we have to be more in tune. Not more in fear, but more in tune, more alert or more aware of our surroundings and what's going on, and get into prayer. And what we talked about here was when you're in faith, prayer doesn't sound fear-filled. It sounds faith-filled. And then you'll be faithful to pray that thing because you're full of faith about the thing. I'm learning more and more to keep my mouth shut if I'm not full of faith on something. But if my mouth is open and I allow it to just say whatever, I'm just grabbing here and there, and there's some faith mixed into it, but it's not like I see the bullseye, bam, and you just put your sights on it and nail it. And you're full of faith about it. And so he's moving us into kind of honing in where we put our faith in the Word, we hear from the Spirit, and then we look for the bullseye. We can put a bead on it, as my dad used to always say, put a bead on that. And so that little red dot, some like guns will do, it's like right there, that's where, you've sighted in for. And so this afternoon, I've had this message ready for weeks already for tonight. And this afternoon, I felt an unrest about it. And it was like, yeah, but it's going to be good. No. And so, at the same time, he wants me to pull some things from it. And then we're gonna deal with certain issues that really can block healing. They can block deliverance. They can block us being prosperous. They can block anything that comes against the blessing of God is not of our Father's kingdom. And that's how you know when something is raising its head, because it's coming against the blessing way of thinking. But if we don't understand how the blessing works, and we don't understand the covenant, or we don't understand that the word blessed means to be empowered to prosper and have success down the road. Like he literally gives us, when he comes upon us, dunamis power. And that dunamis power isn't just, like a lightning bolt where we're just like, wielding something. At the same time, it's a power that changes us first when he comes up on us. And then we minister out of that change, because wherever we've changed, we're full of faith, right? We're faithful. Because we have a story, we have a testimony that we can say, there it is. Now, everybody's in a process, though, of learning that, so it's not an all or nothing, where, you might have a subject in your life that is you're just like, get it, God, it's happening so good. And then there's other places where it's like, oh, come on. Come on, how long do I got to work on this? And last Sunday, we talked about being teachable, so that's a key. The fear of the Lord is a key, because the fear of the Lord opens us up to wisdom. Fear of the Lord is the choice part of the beginning of wisdom. And then wisdom, we read last Sunday, that brings us into a place of understanding and opens us up to being restored to the glory of God. That's a math problem we got to take a look at and really ask him, show me what this is all about. Show me the depth of this. And so there's a process. Now, with a baby Christian, you get saved, and, it's sometimes, even when you're not saved, you're on your journey to it, God will honor certain prayers. And it'll be like, that was so amazing. I don't know how to be obedient. I don't know how to get understanding. I don't understand wisdom and fear. And you don't have any of that sequence, right? But you ask and you receive, and everyone goes, whoa. But as you remember, I know I remember being like, let's try that again. Let's try that again. And then there's a point where God says, sure, but I need you to grow. And that's where many times people will back up, maybe even get a little bitter, or they're like, I don't know where he's left, well, he just used to answer this or whatever. And we expect him to just bust a move every time we want him to bust a move. And he wants us to grow, because now it's not that he is punishing us or whatever, but if we're going to be disciples, then we're disciplined ones. But we're actually being able to open up and grow to a place that we can house the anointing greater. Right? So there's something about housing the anointing. You first get born again, and your faith is like little kid faith. You're like, yes, I believe, boom. And things will happen. But then he'll move you into bigger territory. He'll move you into, like just us saying of Word of Life, we're a regional center. That's different than saying you're a church. Because the cause and effect of that is like, we're a regional center, right? We're not going to pastor everybody out there, but we're supposed to somehow get in a position where we can touch as many lives in the region, and they can come through the corridors of victory to come here. That was a prophecy. And we can go through the corridors of victory and go there. And we move about like that, and it's powerful. So we know our assignment. We have the blessing. But here the Lord is saying, I want you to move into operating in greater realms. So sometimes it takes adjusting your faith to a place of believing things you never believed before. I mean, you sort of believe in, but you never really. When you're in believing something, you're actually in the action of movement of like putting pressure on it. Like say your knee's hurting and you speak the word over it. You put a pressure for the anointing to affect that. And then you go to step down and like, ow, that still hurt. What did I tell you? I mean, sometimes it's all day. You put a pressure on it. For some people, they've had stories where it's a week, and then the doctor's like, well, you gotta have an operation or whatever. Now they just keep the pressure on it. And then they go back in, second opinion, gone. Right? There's something about us coming to a place of putting pressure on. And so as we're talking about healing, that's a good example. I think it's because we can recognize healing where, if somebody doesn't have an eye and all of a sudden they have one. Yeah, I saw that, right? We can recognize it. Or, you're coughing your head off, but now all of a sudden it's not there anymore. Healing has taken place. And we like to look for those cues and different things like that. But when the Lord's moving us as a church, and you're part of a church, that means individuals, and then a group into a new realm of his glory, that means he's wanting the wisdom of God to settle. And that means an increase of the fear of the Lord, not the fear of the devil, not the fear of what he can do, not the fear of his attack and all of those things. It's like, you're just so aware that whatever it is he's asked us to do is very holy. Like the different people moving here to come to the church, it's holy. Holy, set apart from this world as like a mission unto God. It's like, it doesn't think like the world thinks. This is an outside thing that God's doing. And he's introducing it into the world. Well, what happened when Jesus was introduced into the world? Right? How many babies died before that? Right? So if you look, this is horrible stuff going on right now, but there's also a birthing of something greater. There's a time and a culmination of the ages, and we're in it. We are in it right now. And, 50 years from now, whether we're looking on heaven's side or this side, we look back, we go, oh, now I see. But we're not in that. We're over here. And we're trying to see. Right? The prophetic will help us to hold the line. It'll help us to see bits and pieces, but it usually doesn't give us the full meal deal. I think because we would mishandle it, and then we'd go, I already got that, and then we wouldn't grow into it. So there's something about healing, deliverance, all these different things. All of them have to be grown into. That's why we don't go around casting demons out of anybody who just has an eye twitch. It's like, come out of him, and some might come out, but then if that person hasn't grown into that anointing, right, what happens? They circle back and they're like, that was kind of silly. He didn't put anything in there. He didn't replace it with anything. So let's move in. Now he's got a worse problem than he did to begin with. So we as prayer people have to grow into the faith to be able to lay hands on and do those different things. But then as people who receive, which the word receive, remember we talked about, means to take. To think that we can just take things from heaven. Just take them. It ain't that big. It's not that big a deal. This is the anointing of God. This is like looking into the face of God. Very, very holy. That's where the fear of the Lord goes, ooh, I want to make this exchange with my God. I'm in covenant, but it is holy. This is no little thing that we're doing, right? And so it can't be belittled. So I'm just laying the groundwork for some of the things we're going to pray about tonight. So in that, if you see that, if you're part of Word of Life or you're watching online and you're not, the body of Christ is being pulled and moved to a new direction. It's being moved to a place that's going to require us to step up because we are in a culmination of the ages. For such a time as this is starting to come together. There's a culmination. There's a final thing. It's like we're in the final countdown. Even if it's 100 years from now, Jesus returns. Right? And I'm not even here, and I get to watch it from a different angle or whatever, there's something, even at that, we just have to recognize it's our place to deal with what we need to deal with in the now because we're a part of the culmination that's happening right now. And it's very holy, and it's ticking off the demonic realm. While many churches across this land are busy trying to put everyone back to sleep, shh, shh, shh. We don't want to lose people. We just need you all. Just shh. Put some music on that rocks everyone to sleep. Just shh. No tongues. No, we don't want any of that stuff. That gets people woke up, and then they want to pray for stuff. We just need you to shh. It's like that. Or you are seeing what people are almost like, and some of us are feeling like this. You look and you're like, what are those young people doing? It's getting wild up in here, whether it be here or other places, because there's something happening that's going to cause us to have to grow up into it. They're growing up into what God's calling them to do. We're going to that next step. We need to support the next generation. They're not taking over. They're part of us. We're part of them. But one day we will leave. And they have the baton. So this is a time that he's pulling out all stops. Now, let's map this. I love to map when I'm doing counseling. And somebody sits in front of me and I'm like, I have no idea what to tell this person. Most of the time that's true. And then you just pray, right? Or you're praying inside while they're talking. And then as they're telling their story, you begin to map where they came from and what got them to the now. And then go to the word and see, hey, what are you saying for their future? And so mapping is like, whoo. And all of a sudden the prophetic will start working in that mapping. So if we look at what's happening in this culmination, for the church, he's asked us to deal with some things. And I think the overall body of Christ needs to still be working on, let's get rid of offenses. We actually don't have time for it. It's like in the way, like get out, right? But there's also another reason for it is because anything that's like that, especially, going to sleep on your anger, the Bible says Diablos will show up, especially those types of things where it almost gives the demonic realm permission to land on that behavior. And they're out heat seeking right now. So somebody told me recently, they said, well, I just feel like I got to be perfect or I'm going to get attacked. No, that's not what it is. We need to be aware though. We need to be aware of our surroundings. That's part of discernment. You know, being able to feel the atmosphere. Being self-aware is a big old deal. And if we're not self-aware, we've drifted away from even how we feel or what our behaviors are in the moment. You know, we're not self-aware. So he's bringing us to a place where he wants us to be self-aware, discerning, and to see. He wants us to see into what's happening. Then our course of action is to come up into faith through the fear of the Lord, right? Beginning of wisdom, who falls on it, and the glory comes. And when the glory comes, don't you know you just have knowings? Like you can be sitting in a service where the worship is hot, and I'm not talking about a concert kind of thing, but I'm talking about where it's like people are truly worshiping. And before you got out of your car, you couldn't fight your way out of a wet paper bag. And now somehow you're in the worship and revelation just starts coming. It's like, that's what you need to do. And you got to ask forgiveness for this. And why don't you address that in the name of Jesus? And suddenly your faith will come up. So part of what these couple weeks are about is to build us in our most holy faith. But how do you keep your faith up? You know, like we have a saying like, oh, that's a downer. That's a bummer. That literally, I mean, if you put that to your faith, it's like you were up in your most holy faith, and now it's like, right? And then someone's got to come alongside and like, hey, look at me, get up, right? And sometimes Holy Spirit does that with me because there's nobody else around. And I'm like, all right, okay. Then I watch my confession. That's huge, because if I've fallen into whatever it is that he wants me to set up, so that things can land on it. And then I go, I just don't know why I'm under attack, right? If I fall into that and I'm not aware of it, then one of the ways I can be aware is stuff's coming out my mouth I wouldn't normally say. I'm talking trash about my life. And remember, you can't have what you speak against. If you want your checkbook to change, you know, then you don't speak against it, right? You speak for it. But if you're wanting that thing to be prosperous and you speak against it, not so much. And so he is holding us accountable in this day for all the word we know. We know a lot of word, even if you haven't been saved but a few years, because there's so much access to it. It's all around us. It's in the music. It's in fact, it's hard to retain because it's coming in hot, and we got to figure out where to file it and how to do that. And so then Holy Spirit's job is to help us recall it. The word says that he will help us to recall what needs to be said in a moment as the word is planted in us, right? So in this, if we're aware that this is what's going on, you map it and you go bigger picture. Think about your life when you got saved. You know, what did he deliver you of? And take those years and be like, well, that was a lot of deliverance. That was like, and what was the repeating thing, though, that was your biggest battle? So for some people, it's self-hate. Some people, it's rejection. Some people, it's the spirit of heaviness. Like you can be just moving mountains for Jesus, but if something is going to get at you, it'll be the spirit of heaviness. And everybody's a little different. Where familiar spirits, they'll be looking and they'll be like, yeah, but I know Cheryl. And if she's got a weakness, it's over here. And so that's the button, the button that they want to push all the time. And then you can get distracted by the fact, like, why is this here again? This is ridiculous. How many times do I got to take authority over her, you know, and get caught up in that, rather than announcing, I already have the victory. We've been through this before, right? So for some people, it is weakness and sickness in the body. Other people, it's weakness and sickness in the mind, which is part of the body. It's gray matter that can be affected. So in that, I go back to the question, because he asked me this question. If we're in the culmination, this is the bigger picture. We're mapping where we're at. He's delivered us of these different things, but there's a certain reoccurring thing. Why does it stay there? Why is it if anything would happen, you got thrown in a concentration camp, your weakness would show. I mean, it would be that area. It's not going to pick something brand new because those things don't work. Your flesh, it's like it gravitates toward that. This is part of us shoring up right now. This is part of us coming into a spot of like, this, many times the thing that reoccurs is generational. You might be the first one in your entire family who has ever addressed it. I meant talking about in faith. I got relatives who addressed the things that were passed on, but they said stuff like this. They were like, Jesus, help us. Or if there is a God, I hope something happens. Or, and they were trying to address it and it just ticked it off. And then it nailed the next generation even harder. And then here in 1981, my family gets saved. Yeah. Woo. And then, whoa. Because we were the first ones out for a lot of different things. And now we're going to address those things. We don't know what we're doing. So God in his grace would just deliver us in big chunks. I remember my brother just big chunks. And myself just like, whoo. But there was those things that had hang time. And those were the things that it's like, what is that? And why are you still here? Are you thinking of things right now in your family? And here's the thing. If you've conquered it to a certain degree and all of a sudden you look and you see it in your grandchild, there is a holy fire that comes up like, get out, right? It's just, because you are working in this battle, fighting the fight of faith and you don't want it to pass on to your sons or your daughters or your grandchildren, right? So on a good day, we forget about those things. Because we shouldn't be just sitting there dwelling on all the negative and sin and this is my ancestral blah, blah, blah. But at the same time, when you're in war, that's your Achilles. That's the Achilles. And then we have to look and go, So for a long time, and there's still something I can feel it. I love to preach on prosperity. Why do you think that is? I asked this to someone and they said, because you live in a big house. The house still has to be paid for. And there's things that have to be done. And they don't just appear, right? At the same time, God has gifted us with different things. But does that mean if you live in a bigger house that you know how to operate totally in prosperity? No, and in fact, if I showed you pictures of where my mother grew up, 7 kids in a bed laying this way so they could stay warm, or you could see out the side of the log cabin. Wind would come in, the little spider webs would be blowing, and junk cars everywhere, all that kind of stuff. And they called it the ranch. Her mom had a form of mental illness, and it was the Depression. Okay, so if you compare how she grew up to how I'm growing up, totally different thing. You think, conquered it, woo! No. Because the difference here now is I have a destiny that requires me to have high influence everywhere I go. That's my destiny. My destiny is not to live somewhere in Alaska in a little cabin. It is like influence toward the gospel, helping people, doing all that. That requires finances. And so you can't be to a point of like, this is what I was delivered from. This is why I'm bringing that up. And you see that and you go, oh yeah, we're so delivered. We have a good car or whatever it is. There is so much more, and it does not mean that same enemy isn't just sitting there and waiting to perpetuate the very thing that you've come against. Sickness in the body is like that. Hating yourself, all of those different things. And it shows up the most when you go to do that next thing. That next thing, all of a sudden, like, why are you here? Yeah? So the spirit of death was something that I dealt with for a long time. That might sound creepy, and some people go, I don't know, you're talking all kinds of trash or whatever. Hey, once you know, you can't not know. I saw it. As I was dying, I saw him leaning against the wall, looking all, like he said, tonight I will kill you. Right? So why didn't you see that? Because that might not be the thing that's hot after you. So I fight for my right to be here. I'm constantly looking and watching like, no, you ain't going to mess with it. And you don't touch my grandkids or my kid. It's like that. And so you're very aware of that. At the same time, you have to grow in all those other areas. See, I'm not preaching the word. I'm trying to catch you up in the storyline of where we're all at, because he's moving this a little bit different. So some things the kingdom of darkness or the power of sin will rest on because we're untaught. Some things it'll rest on because there's some ground that needs to be taken. Some things it'll rest on because we constantly accept the fact that it's going to come back. I mean, what are you going to do? What are you going to do if it comes back? And or that God doesn't love us if it shows up again. That's our weakness. Like, see, I'm always screwing up, and there's no way. I mean, if he would just do something, just deliver me. I have prayed, and the whiny kind of things that we do. There's just so many reasons things can settle. But in the end, the more discerning we become, the more you can rightfully hear from the word. And the word itself will divide things inside of you, and you'll see where the blessing is and where the curse is. And those aha moments are like, yeah, I see you. I see what you're doing. So it happens with the physical body. And what I have found is the emotional side of things is always attached to something that was traumatizing or something that had an assignment to the person. And so what I'm talking about is I find it interesting right now that certain things that have been released really attack the heart. But if you read scripture about end times, what does it say? People's hearts will fail them because of fear. So fear, when you study that on the body, prevents healing from taking place. And it's like a blocker to healing because your body's in protective mode. It's not in healing mode. The more afraid you are, the more you stay in that mode, and you're revved, and there's adrenaline. And so interesting, now there's just a lot going on that has to do with the heart. There's a lot going on that has to do with cancer and things that have been released, like big time crazy stats on this stuff. And so what can happen is that looking at that can actually cause you to go in fear while you're trying to make sure your body stays healthy. So there's a lot we're working on, a lot of projects we're working on. So fear was one of the weaknesses that came down your family line. That's something that would have to be addressed. But one of the things that he told me to address tonight is the spirit of heaviness. And so before we go any further talking about these different things, we're going to deal with that as a group and for ourselves, for our families, and for the church. Because there's something about the spirit of heaviness that it's a form of oppression, and fear brings with it the thought of torment. And so torment draws oppression on. So it's like heavy on a person. And it stops healing from taking place. It stops these different things from taking place. And I'm going to look up a scripture here because all my scriptures that we're all organized are not here tonight. Thank you. So let's see here. He gives us the oil of joy. And that's what takes care of the spirit of heaviness. Right? I can find where I put that. I believe it's Nehemiah. Any case, then Ezra said, Nehemiah 8:10. Ezra said to them, go your way, eat the rich festival food, drink the sweet drink, and send portions to him for whom nothing is prepared. For this day is holy to our God. And do not be worried, for the joy of the Lord is your strength and your stronghold. So the spirit of heaviness tries to wipe out the joy of the Lord. The joy of the Lord will drive out the spirit of heaviness. But the joy is not I tell you a joke and you go, ha, ha, ha. No, that's funny. Joy is something different. It can cause laughter, but joy is a very spiritual thing It's a force that when he brings it on you, it doesn't make sense. The joy of the Lord, you're like, I should really be freaking out right now, but for some reason, I just feel really good about life. And you have a joy that will carry you, and oppression can't rest there. But if there's something that's gone generational that's actually trained the brain, and even in your mother's womb, if she had oppression issues, it would train your body along with her body being trained of like that, just that, like, I'm trying, like, oh, it's not going to work out. Doesn't pay to even try anymore. Right? That's what oppression does. And then it gets so heavy, you feel like you can't get up. Now, depression means to press in. Right? You hear me say that a lot. It means to press in. So you looked at me funny. I'm not going to deal with that. I'll just press that in. I don't know if I can trust you. So, and I go from person to person. But what it says is I'm actually not dealing with any of this. We're just going to press it in. Well, then one day, all that stuff you pressed in catches up to you, doesn't it? One day your body says, I think I've had about enough. I don't have any more room. Like you're a hoarder of pressing in. And the Lord wants us to be able to deal with some of those things. And once we know how to unpack things, put them away, throw them out, do whatever we can, there's a flow that goes through our soul that stuff comes in, we release it. Stuff comes in, we put it away. Stuff comes in. But part of what oppression does is this ain't going anywhere. I want you heavy in this, right? I don't want you getting back up again. Now, some of us can have a side, like myself, where if I'm stubborn for Jesus, we can use the word stubborn. I don't even know if that is what it is. But it's very much, I set my face. And I set my faith when I do that. And like, I ain't moving. And so certain things, I'll be so focused on not moving that he's trying to tell me something like, I know, but I'm not going to move off this. Because, it's like one of those hunting dogs that are like pointers. And they and they just look, and you're like, come on, boy. And they're like, I know, I see it, And there's a good part to that, but it's not a part that, we still have to be able to hear from, and we still have to be able to absorb that. And so what can happen is if we've experienced something like oppression or depression, and you recognize it's here, you're like, oh no, I just fell into that. And then you can set your faith. Like I'm talking about, like, I ain't doing that. See, that's a choice of your will. That's harder, though, than when the joy of the Lord comes. But think about the body of Christ. If you had to go and be like, we're going to seminars on the joy of the Lord. People are teaching on the joy of the Lord. We're going to go places because we don't understand the joy of the Lord. Or if I said to you, explain the joy of the Lord. How many of you would have 10 scriptures off the top of your head? Because part of the trick of what he does to make us sick is he causes us to press in or be oppressed. And then we're trying to set our faith. That's that part of like, I'll fight you anyway. I'll get you anyway. And you're still in the fight, but you're fighting a little bit more in the flesh than you are when you fight with the joy of the Lord. And I remember people thinking Brother Hagin was crazy. Well, that has happened all the time. People think that we're crazy. But hey, I had such a thing come on me one time. I was downstairs. I was going to get into the sauna. And, doctor's reports, all these different things were coming in. And it just was like so heavy. I just felt like I couldn't breathe. It was just a feeling like this is the end of the world. Anybody know what I'm talking about? Now, if you look at stuff where there are problems, I wrote it down, here's the problems. Well, it's not the end of the world. And I don't have to solve world peace. I'm just looking at this problem. But what it'll do is when it gets on you, it feels like you better solve world peace. It's all on you, baby. And if you can't, well, this is it, I guess. This is the final. And it'll cause that feeling of it's just way too heavy. And I remembered watching a video of Kenneth Hagin. He said, sometimes when I want the joy of the Lord, I just laugh by faith. And of course, nobody's around, and I'm like, okay, all right, show me what you do, And he just started, he's like, ha, 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 ha. And I was like, all right, I don't know about this. This is, I don't know. But nobody's around. So, and there was a part of me though that I could feel that was very spiritual. Something heavy was on me. And the reason it was is like, why would I feel embarrassed? No one else is there. Everyone's sleeping. Right? So even to try it a little bit, but there was this thing of if I went to do it, it was like, eh. And there was a part where oppression will get to the point where it will convince you that just let me sit here a little while longer. That's what we call pity party, but it's like you're having a party with yourself and it's all about pity. And you feel like you can't release and just come over to the joy of the Lord, because then who's going to worry about that? Who's going to cry about that? And I can't act like that's not a big deal. That is a big deal. So I can't just cross over to joy and forget it. That feels wrong. See how the training is there? And so he said, I just did it by faith. And he was sharing a story about how people had talked really negative to him about his healing. And he just started laughing. And he got into it probably a minute or something like that. And joy came on him. Now that's different than, let me tell you a joke. We'll make you happy. I'll crack you up or something like that. That was like he knew it was super on the natural, the joy of the Lord. And it changed him on the outside and it changed him on the inside. Now he said, I follow the Spirit with this. I don't just do this anytime, willy-nilly, like we come in. Let's all laugh tonight, People have tried that. Or they've been in services where the joy of the Lord came and there was laughter. And then they try to make it happen the next Sunday at their church. And they'll start, come on, guys, let's all laugh together. Well, psychosomatically, if I start laughing, somebody can see you smiled already. But I talk about laughter psychosomatically. You can, it'll hit that part of your brain. But it's so different when it's the joy. It will hit that oppression in a way that it just goes, this is not time for it to be funny. Like, I'm trying to be sad here. This is not funny. And I've had that happen to me. And you're like, I'm trying to be serious. I'm in the middle of a battle. Like, who goes to war and starts cracking up? You're about to take the hill and you're like, just give me a second. I can't, oh my God, this is so funny. I mean, it just, and there's that. Now that's the outpouring of it. But the after effect looks like this. How you doing? That's what it looks like when you go to work. That's what it looks like when there's not enough in your checkbook. That's what it looks like when your body's trying to do symptoms. That's what it looks like when other things are happening. Because the joy infilled you and it got on you. The joy of the Lord is now your strength, which means I can go to work and I'm not going, ha, 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 all the time I'm at work. But there is a power of joy in my body, in my soul, that says, oppression, you can't sit here. Sometimes tears are for release, and sometimes you can get caught in a cry that doesn't want to end, and that's called grief. And so, got to get it out, right? But then, how long do you continue to cry? You start to look for the joy of the Lord. But we're used to doing the fight thing. That's fine. I'll just be happy anyway. And I'm going to get to work and I'll do my job and I'm going to be faithful to God. And those are all really good statements, but you're doing it without the joy of the Lord. So that's a drag. That's a drag to do that. And here we're in this culmination of evil, just, and oppression. Now, let's go back and map some of the things that have been done. And we don't even know all the things. The witches have come forward. The warlocks have come forward. The Satanists are out in the open, right? They were at the Capitol. They're over here. They're in our neighborhoods. They're in the schools. Communism is a form of witchcraft, if you look at it spiritually, because it is a form of someone controlling another person. It's like slavery, which everyone hates that word. But they're like, but it's okay if we go communist? No, it's a form of slavery. It's a form of rulership where someone dominates over someone else. And so this has all been released. The announcements online, written in words, about the 2030 agenda, about this, about that, all the stuff that comes up on Facebook, all of those things they're prophetic to the atmosphere. One of the things that they said is after the COVID shot, within 5 years, right? People are going to just be dying and dying. That's what they said, right? They prophesied that. So we could do this in an oppressive way and be like, that's what they said. Even doctors said that. And then we let that settle and we start to get sad about it. And then we're grieving about it all the time. Next thing you know, our body stops healing itself because it's in agreement with their prophecy. So if you map what's going on, it's a crazy old big thing that's trying to kill us all. Just to be blunt about it, right? Was the devil trying to kill us before? Yes, but now it's heightened. It's just heightened because the return of Jesus is coming closer. It was heightened before he showed up as a baby. It was heightened before the resurrection. And we're not getting out of it now. Right? So at the same time, he wants salvations to happen, and there's a sorting out, people choosing hell, people choosing Christ. And here we are. But if we don't know how our enemy works, it can get on us, and the oppression side of it can eat our lunch. And we'll totally, this is the same way people have gotten away from praying in tongues and different things like that. When you get distracted, when you're constantly in a battle and you're only focusing on one part, you forget all your weaponry. There's benefits that he has for us. And the joy of the Lord is one of them. The joy of the Lord can come out of the peace also and out of the fruit of the Spirit, which people think they have to pray for that all the time. Give me patience, Lord, give me. If he dwells in you, the fruit is in there because Holy Spirit produces. He's not like people, where we're like, well, see if anything grows. No, he's the Spirit of the living God, same Spirit that raised Christ from the dead. And so if he's in you, it's fire. If he's on you, dunamis. And so we're over here, please, Lord, give us patience. No, use the patience you have and he'll light it up. Use the joy of the Lord, that little bitty spark inside of you even, and he'll light it up. So, there is something about the joy of the Lord. Now, this is what it says in Isaiah chapter 60. Arise from spiritual depression to a new life. What? Amplified says spiritual depression to a new life. Unanswered questions. We're not sure why it's not working. All of those things would be, these are all problems that are spiritual, and I guess I'm just going to press them in. No, he says, get up. Didn't he say that? Arise to a new life. Shine, be radiant with the glory and the brilliance of the Lord, for your light has already come. He's here. He's here. And so I want to say this, that many times when tragic things happen, churches will fill up and they're looking for the pastors to talk about the tragic things and rehearse the tragic things. And we all just don't really know. Let's just stay together. We're all going through, that kind of talk. There's some really tragic things going on right now. And the best thing that can be preached is the word of faith, where you come up into your faith. Otherwise, what we're saying is, let's all just wait and see when oppression settles. Anytime now, we're going to press us all in and be depressed about it. Eventually, holding on, won't you help me, Jesus? Just hoping and praying, that posture. And so then what happens is that's what happens. Then the fear comes. It's like, well, I hope he's going to do something. It's not the hope, the joyful, confident expectation of something good. It's the world's hope. And then suddenly, oppression will hit. And then we're walking around being survivors instead of living life. It's a trick. It's a trick. Whether you're going through something, there's a lot of people, there's been a lot of deaths in their family, or, somebody, may have left, or there's somebody leaving like what you're going through. There's all those things for all of us. There's junk going on right now. But if we forget our home base, we're going to get nailed. And what will we be nailed with? Oppression. And then oppression never speaks faith, because it's not full of faith. It's in total unbelief. That's what makes it so heavy. It makes it so like, I don't know. God will get us through this. Right? That's why people will label you as crazy I'm sure if we sat down with Brother Hagin or Smith Wigglesworth or any of the people who knew how to operate in faith, that they could tell us some really crazy stories of horrible things that have happened around them, to them, all that. But they chose to get back up in their faith because it's our main weapon. It's what pleases God. It's our main weapon. And so, but it's better to fuel it with joy and peace. Peace says, he's got me. There's nothing lacking here. There's nothing broken here. Yeah, I see that person passed away. Yeah, I see the car got wrecked or whatever. But we're going to keep going. We're passing through here, and we're going to leave faith trails everywhere. See how that's a different thing? Rather than, well, I don't know if we're getting driven out. I just hope Jesus comes. If he just come this year, it would settle so many things. There's no joy of the Lord in the tone of the voice. And the joy of the Lord is the strength. So, and then doesn't it aggravate you though, if you're feeling depressed and whatever, and you're in that sulky thing where you're just like, leave me alone. And you hear somebody preaching, arise from your spiritual depression. You're like, oh, be quiet. You don't even know what I'm going through. It'll do that. It'll come up in you. To a new life, shine, be radiant with the glory and the brilliance of the Lord, for your light has come. And the glory and the brilliance of the Lord has risen up on you. Well, it sure don't feel like it. We got to get out of the way and let him settle. And sickness and disease loves when you're in that vein. Right? When it's just become so heavy. And now on top of you're given a job, well, you need to believe for your healing. I know. It's heavy. That's what happens. It just feels like, could you believe with me? Could you pray for me? I need to go somewhere where because the heaviness has gotten so heavy that we don't have any strength. Faith is still there, because even if you have faith, a little grain of mustard seed, we've been given a measure of faith, so you didn't lose the faith. It's on hold, or it's operating in unbelief. Can you feel that in the atmosphere, just talking that out? It went, wait a second, right? For in fact, darkness will cover the earth. The deep darkness will cover the peoples, but the Lord will rise up on you. And his glory and his brilliance will be seen on you. Nations will come to your light. If we fall into oppression or depression and get stuck there, people will not see the gospel in us. There will be no light. And you can have 1,000 scriptures memorized. Nada, nothing. Nations will come to your light, and kings to the brightness of your rising. So there's a brightness when you get up. Because he told us to get up, because there's a new life in the glory of the Lord, or the light has already come upon us. You don't get up, the light doesn't come on. You make a choice to get up, all of a sudden, woof. And somewhere in there, eventually, somewhere in there, the joy of the Lord has to happen. I have 2 areas right now, hasn't crossed over yet. This side where I'm in joy kind of laughs about how silly it is over there on that other side of me. Like, you are, so what are you doing? Like, what are you doing? And that side, when it answers back, goes, I don't know. I'm irritated. If I stay irritated long enough because I don't want to have to do blah, 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 or it's just so much coming at you or whatever it is, whatever the reason, and you stay irritated, then you'll only stay angry so long, and anger unresolved attracts oppression. And the talk that will start coming is like, you're about to be punished. And so as soon as you get that sensation, guess what happens? Then something like your dishwasher breaks, something like that, and you're like, see, the punishment has started. Nothing ever goes right for me. Yeah? Nations will come to your light and kings to the brightness of your rising. And here's the thing, those covered in oppression, if this church was lit up with joy, we're full of faith, and there's no place for oppression here, it will tick off the world. Some will come running to the light. Others will be like, that's so stupid. That's got to be a cult. You don't. People can't just do that. They'll be jealous of the thing that they hate, and the thing they hate, they've now become. So that's where the persecution will come. To persecute, we can't have you in joy. You need to be bothered. You need to be uptight. There needs to be that. That's what it's doing. Because the goal is to get that heaviness to come on you. It's a spirit. They all gather together. They come to you. He says, lift up your eyes around you and see. They all gather together. They come to you. Your sons will come from far away. I believe that in the mighty name of Jesus. And your daughters will be looked after at their side. Then you will see and be radiant, and your heart will tremble with joy. And the word rejoice is you have joy, right? And then you feel like you lost it, so you better get rejoying. That's what we better do. Let's rejoy. Like on Sunday mornings when we come in like this. And last week we were really joyful, but now we're just maybe we're not upset or whatever, but just and we come in and all of a sudden the music's pumping or whatever. Then we rejoy. Like, let's get in here and rejoy this thing. Rejoice in the Lord always. And again, I say rejoice. See? So irritating if you're depressed. It's like, she has got a big mouth. She needs to shut up. Yeah? Walk into a hospital room sometime with the joy of the Lord. Family members can get irritated. You're smiling way too much. But the person who's laying there loves the joy. Loves that they feel safe. They're like, here's somebody who's a believer. Here's somebody who's bringing something to the table. But people filling the room with a depression, oppression feeling, and they're trying to figure out their last moments, not really what you want, right? So that's how powerful the joy of the Lord is. Let's read on just a little bit more here, because I'm speaking to the spirit realm around us and our families. Your sons will come from afar off, and your daughters will be looked after at their side. Then you will see and be radiant, and your heart will tremble with joy and rejoice, because the abundant wealth of the seas will be brought to you. Are you joyful about that part? So you can tell if there's a spirit of poverty messing with your family, passed on generations. If you say anything about wealth and people go tight, they're like, oh yeah. Right? Are we happy about this scripture? If you're not happy about it, there's something there. Just a little side thought. The wealth of the nations will come to you. Now we're just messing. Oh my goodness, that's big. We first were talking about just, some of the wealth of the seas. We're talking about the nations will come to you. And he's talking as individuals, but he's also talking to all the people. Whew! Because the abundant wealth will come to you. A multitude of camels, that would be cars, from the eastern trading tribes will cover you, Jerusalem. The young camels of Midian and Ephah. Now, all of these things are even when they say young camels, that's a newer car to us now. Right? Right? Because a camel, when it's younger, it's got a lot more stamina and things like that. So this isn't, I'm not trying to say, we're going to get rich quick or any of those kinds of things. But we should not be looking at our issues of financial, emotional, whatever, in a way of like, I don't know where it's going to come from. I can't, right? Because the fear will bring the oppression. And you can set your face as flint. You can do that and be like, we're paying this bill off. But it's totally different when you do it in the joy of the Lord. I've done it both ways. Not so much fun on the first half. But you can rejoice that, we paid it. That's really nice. But you don't feel good about it. It's just like, glad that's gone. There's no joy in it. Because the thing is, so what else is he going to ask you to do now? Well, I don't want to that took so much to pay that bill off. I don't want to expand anything. We're good. We're fine. Same curtains 40 years later. You know what I'm saying? because we're not about to cause another bill. Well, that is part of an oppressive spirit. It's something that keeps us bondage. So the joy of the Lord is our strength. Now there's things sitting in this region that if people go to move in, right, it's an attack against them, especially if they're coming with something new or some joy. I know, because we moved in here. It's like, whoo. Similar demons to Colorado, some of them are not. There's a whole lot, whatever. And then there's other things where you'll just find as you go to do your destiny, things will crop up and they will try to poke at anything that brought you depression before and anything that will cause oppression to try to settle. Amen? Have we all been through a lot? I know we've been through a lot because we live in a sin-filled world. Nobody gets out of it. So we all think there's that person. They're like, they had a good life. They really, we all been touched by sin. There's nothing good about that. We either participated in it or someone did it to us. And it stinks both ways. So here we are dealing with this spirit of heaviness. And yet he tells us to arise from the spiritual depression to a new life. So attitudes come out of the spiritual, right? If you're down spiritually, your attitude's going to stink. But a lot of times we'll think, well, change your attitude. All right, I'll think different. But the joy of the Lord is super on the natural. It is, I believe, and I got to study this out more, but I was thinking about it, praying about it. It is that thing that changes something up inside of you that causes you to come up in faith and you don't know why. It's like all of a sudden you're like, I got faith about this when I didn't have faith about it before. I just don't know. Well, what happened? I don't know. I was just hanging out with God and it's just that thing lifted off of me. Now, when someone comes against you to betray you, to lie about you, to whatever, you can feel that heaviness, which is all around us all the time. But you can feel it when it's zeroed to you, right? And it comes in, it's like, ooh, if you're not careful, you'll start gathering, I'll just say the energy of that, or the thought of that, or the anointing of that. And you're like, no, I'm still good. I still got the joy. The next thing you know, it'll culminate so much. You don't know why you woke up sad. You don't know why you woke up hating yourself. The very thing when you got saved that you thought you got delivered of, why are you here? What is this? And then when you try to get out of it, have you ever had this happen when you try to get out of it? Oppression itself is such a lie. It will talk smack to you. It'll just be like, well, you actually deserve this feeling. If you'd actually serve God like you're supposed to. If condemnation kind of stuff will start coming up and I don't know, you're going to have to do something big now, pull some big lever because look at how screwed up you really are. And then you'll pull away from people because you got to try to get your act together. Well, you shouldn't have an act to begin with. But that's what we're trying to do. It's silly when you're dealing with a spirit that's oppressive. Your situation, we're up there in that town, right? Since we're on that town, every town has some form of oppressive thing. But there are towns you drive through, you're like, I don't want to live here. I'm good. Okay, I'm good. But when you have that assignment, the assignment for whatever period of time it is there, if he tells you to go into a town that's like that, you can't go in there bringing the same thing they have. You have to go in there bringing the joy and the joy-filled message. And then God gives you a release from it. You got a release from it. But you went in with joy and you came out with joy. That's our goal. What is that song? That's the scripture. Mountains and the hills will... Oh, yes. Clap their hands. Yes, we used to sing this up in the Boulder Mountains when we were having fun, taking authority over things. I remember that. But anyway, side subject. So he's telling us to arise. The joy of the Lord is our strength. And we have to take a look at physically, I believe joy can bring super on the natural to our body and our cells will start moving differently. it's supernatural part of the Holy Spirit that brings us strength. And we can worship in times where we couldn't unload the dishwasher. You ever get that where you were like, it's too hard. And you show up at church and the Spirit of God gets on you. Next thing you know, you're dancing in the front. You're like, I thought you can unload the dishwasher. I know. I don't know what that was all about. So there's something to it. So let me find my scripture on, to make sure. So anyways, he says in Nehemiah 8:10 that the strength and the stronghold is actually what he's doing. He's making that way for us through joy. But now I'm looking here. It's Isaiah 61:3. To appoint unto them that mourn in Zion, to give unto them beauty for ashes. This is such a well-known scripture, right? You had to memorize it in catechism and those different things. The depth that's in the scripture, though, I don't think we get. To give unto them beauty for ashes, the oil of joy for mourning, the garment of praise for the spirit of heaviness. That's why it gets so irritated when you're under the spirit of heaviness and people start praising. It's too noisy. The music's too loud. There's crazy Christians, and they can't see I'm going through something, right? That they might be called trees of righteousness, the planting of the Lord, that he may be glorified. So here's a couple translations for the spirit of heaviness: spirit of despair, or a faint spirit, or a suffering spirit. That's all built into the spirit of heaviness. So suffering spirit, a faint spirit, and a spirit of despair. Despair has that word picture to it that it's like you're at the end. Done. We're just done. You ever make that announcement about your marriage or different things? Everyone's like, I never have. I'm just done. That's how it sounds. I'm just done. We're done talking about this. We're done. And somebody pulls this big lever and it slams down. We're just done, which means there's no movement for any change from here on out because we're just done. Right? That's despair. That's your brain talking out of you've come to this place where there's no joy. You can't see past the problem anymore. And you're afraid of trying to deal with it because many times, especially in marriage, when you go try to deal with it, you don't want the argument again. So I'm just done. I'm done. I'm done. Sell the farm, or whatever it is. You make that announcement, and the Lord's going, what? Yesterday you were fine, but now you're just done. That's how fast it can come on, and you can make some big. People quit their jobs, they leave positions, they do all kinds of things where it's like, because suddenly they're done, and yet we haven't heard from the Lord. The Lord tells you you're done, then you're done. If he tells you you're not done, then you better get in there in the joy of the Lord. You better get you some joy of the Lord. Amen.